Welcome to Tourism Talk. I'm Laura Oswald, Director of Marketing at the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. Today, we have a very special visitor, an episode that is part of our U.S. Creative Cities series. Paducah is one of 9 creative cities in the United States and 180 in the world. And through this series, we're going to be introducing you to some of Paducah's fellow creative cities here in the United States that are representing American cultural heritage and positioning their cities for the future through creativity. So today, we are welcoming Claudia Guerra from San Antonio, a city of gastronomy. Thank you for joining us, Claudia.
Oh, thank you for inviting.
We are so excited to have you and hear San Antonio's story and your story. And I have to mention that you have the coolest title. You are the cultural historian for the city of San Antonio.
Yes, that's right.
What does that entail?
So I work in the Office of Historic Preservation. And traditionally, historic preservation is about buildings, but San Antonio is focused on people. So my job is really to think about how people are connected to place and work with community to find those places that matter to them and how we can sustain not only those places, but the community and their culture.
That is so powerful. It all comes down to the people. And
Yes.
Pride of place is a term that we have used quite often in talking about Paducah's creativity and how that intersects with our heritage.
Yes.
So we are excited to hear more about that. And certainly I think the best place to start would be to introduce our viewers to a bit of what San Antonio is known for. What are the people of San Antonio like, and what is that experience that inspires you in your work?
Well, San Antonio is a very unique kind of place. In fact, we have a World Heritage Site, which are our San Antonio missions. And the reason that they are inscribed as World Heritage Sites is because of the unique culture that was created. So that's reflected all over the city. That unique culture is a confluence of the Spanish and the indigenous populations coming together to create something completely new. Then another added layer was when the German population started immigrating to San Antonio. So we've got this convergence of different types of cultures that have created unique things, from the kind of music that we listen to the types of food that we eat, even to the built environment.
Yes, and we can relate to those elements here in Paducah being a confluence as well, at the confluence of the Ohio and Tennessee rivers, and that having shaped our heritage. And I know throughout your tour of Paducah thus far, you've seen some connections between our cities. What has stood out to you so far?
Well, the first thing I saw was that you have a flood wall or a retaining wall. I'm not sure what you call it. We have a dam.
Yes.
It's very similar to that. So because we're along these confluence of waterways, San Antonio used to flood quite a bit. So we have our own retaining wall, which in this case had to be very tall, so it's a dam. And we also use our river, but we use it in a different way. So I've learned that Paducah's river is a vital part of the economy because of transportation. For San Antonio, it's a vital part of the economy because it's become part of our tourism.
Yes.
We have the San Antonio River Walk.
Absolutely. And I know I've experienced that. That brings many people to San Antonio and to the river, which we love. Your background there in cultural history and cultural heritage has you doing some very interesting things to preserve not only life on the waterways, but life throughout the area. You mentioned how large San Antonio is and some of the elements of what that looks like. What are some of the experiences beyond the river that bring people to San Antonio?
So I think that there are a number of them. And I think what comes to mind first, because it's a primary project that I'm working on, are what we call legacy businesses. These are the businesses that are so unique to San Antonio and give it authenticity. So we have a boot maker, for instance. It is Texas, so we love our boots. So there are a couple of boot makers that still do them in the hand traditional ways. We have hat makers who are doing the same thing. And then we have restaurants. We have other sorts of places that are creating the music, teaching how to dance in the traditional ways. So those are the intangible parts of our heritage that we're trying to preserve by creating a legacy business program that honors those businesses.
Absolutely. We love that. And you did touch a bit on your gastronomy there, and
Yes.
that is the creative field within which San Antonio is designated by
Yes.
UNESCO. And you mentioned a little bit of what that culinary tradition looks like, but we love seeing you branch out of gastronomy and
Yes.
connecting with us as a city of craft and folk art. And we hear how you also have craft in a big way.
Yes.
So what is, the value that you see of being part of this network of cities? Your city is a new creative city. What is this opportunity looking like to you and your fellow citizens?
So I think for us, one of the ways, first of all, you're right, we just fairly newly inducted in 2017, so we've barely had a year. And what we're really gaining out of this is sharing and learning from other places. San Antonio is a very international city, but there are places all over the world that have done a really good job of keeping that culture. So right now we're learning from them. What are those experiences that they can show us in terms of either policy making or just simply as simple as an event as having a festival that honors something. So those are all learning experiences for us right now.
Absolutely. And I think that tenet of the network, sharing best practices, knowledge, experiences, that is the first area of action of the network. And I think that we all see listening, learning, has so much value to all of us.
Yes.
And we're so excited that through this series, having you and other U.S. creative cities to Paducah, that we can expand that learning to our local business leaders and local citizens and allow them to get a feel for what your city and other cities here in the U.S. are doing through this network.
Well, and I think the entire idea that creativity is a catalyst for innovation and for economy. I think for so long we've really thought of business as separate from creativity, but that creative endeavor is a large part of the economy in San Antonio. And to really focus on it this way gives us an advantage that that I think we didn't necessarily have before because we didn't see it in that way.
Sure. Places that value on it.
Yes.
What are some of the policies or notable projects that you might mention, even just one from San Antonio, that really portrays that connection between creativity and business and economy?
So the Legacy Business Program that I mentioned is one of them, but we're also creating cultural districts, cultural heritage districts. So these are not the same as a historic district. It's really focused on culture. It doesn't have the same regulatory experience that one might have in a historic district, but it does allow everyone to understand there's something special and unique about this place. And so if you're coming here to develop or create infill, you need to be able to understand what's happening. So what we do is create documentation through community engagement and create a little report. So anybody who wants to work in that area will understand that culture and honor it.
Absolutely, and that enhances the experience so much.
Yes.
We're very excited to learn from you and learn how we might attribute some of your best practices like that.
Well, I think that often people are drawn to a place and they're drawn to it because it's authentic, but they might not know what that authenticity is. So to articulate it for them is helpful because everyone, I think, really wants to respect a place. It's just maybe not always having the tools or the information that's needed to do that.
Right. And one of the things I think that is so powerful about the process and approach that you take with that is that you are empowering the members of the community to give voice and to give that articulation.
Absolutely. They are the experts. So even though I have this title, cultural historian, I never want to think that I know more than the community that I'm working with. They are teaching me.
Sure.
I'm just the vehicle to help express what I've heard from the community.
Yes. One question that comes to mind that I would love to hear your take on is, what is the definition of culture?
I'm glad you asked. So the International Council of Monuments and Sites has a definition, which is what we use. And that's basically the expression of a community, expression of a people. And that can manifest itself in different types of objects, but it can also manifest itself in traditions. So it might be a building that we live and work in, but it also might be a song that we celebrate or a dance that we move to. But there are things that we hand down generation after generation and that have value. Could be economic value, but it's also this value of feeling like you belong to something.
Yes, that's beautiful. Really beautiful. And I think one thing that comes to mind that we've spoken about is your food festivals. As we think about being a city of gastronomy, you do have rich traditions, events, a community of creative people working in gastronomy. And I think those festivals, I'd love if you'd share some of those and what those look like throughout the year that speak to those different cultural traditions.
So one of our oldest festivals is called Night in Old San Antonio. And this happens in one of the oldest communities in the city called La Villita. And so what happens there is every culture that has influenced San Antonio has a little booth where they sell their food.
Wow.
So you can eat everything from a traditional Irish food to the more expected Mexican foods, but you also have Indian food, you have Asian food. Basically every culture that's touched San Antonio gets to display their type of food there. And then we have more new festivals, which I have fun with because this might not have meaning anywhere else in the world other than San Antonio, but it shows how unique it is. We have our Barbacoa and Big Red Festival. So Big Red is a particular drink, a soft drink from San Antonio, and you can't really get it anywhere else other than Texas. Then Barbacoa is the Mexican tradition of cooking a cow's head underground, and traditionally we eat that on Sunday mornings. So the Big Red and Barbacoa Festival is celebrating that traditional food, and it's fun. It's just a lot of everybody just comes out and we eat and we drink Big Red all day long.
I love it. We have Sundrop that is made here in the region and a favorite, so we can relate.
Yes. And those are all important things to remember and to carry on as a tradition, even if it seems like it's just soda. But soda is important.
It has a connection, and that is part of our culture.
Yes.
As you mentioned, I think, sometimes we think people may think of culture as just going to a classical music performance or something like that. But it is so much deeper, and we love the work that you're doing to educate the community and engage them in that process.
Well, Paducah's doing a great job of it. I'm very impressed with the town so far. It's beautiful, and I can tell everyone here feels like part of the community and has passion about it. So you're doing a great job of it too.
Wow. And like we said, you have been touring and you've gotten to see some diverse components of our community. And one of the big things that you're doing while you're here, in addition to touring and meeting with locals that have shared interests and professions, is speaking to our Rotary Club.
Yes.
And so this is an exciting presentation for us to be able to present U.S. Creative City representatives like yourself. We were talking a little bit that this is a different kind of presentation than you typically do.
Yes.
How does it compare? You were just saying you've been in Brazil and New York City recently, and now you're in Paducah.
Yes. Well, I have to say, I feel more nervous about this presentation than anything I've done recently. So typically I'm presenting to other cultural heritage professionals who are trying to understand what they might do in their cities. It's also sharing, because I'm learning. I was in Buenos Aires, and I was learning how they continue traditions through a lot of their artisanships. And so it was, again, a sharing of knowledge, but someone who's more of my peer. I was just in New York City, where I was working with scholars from Columbia University and other places to think about social inclusion and historic preservation. Again, not nervous. Here I'm nervous because you guys are so on the ball, and there's an energy here that in the other places I'm speaking to people who kind of are working in the field anyway, you are so sincere here. I mean, there's an energy, and I really hope that I deliver and feed into that vibe that you guys have going on right now.
Well, I trust that you will, and I want to encourage our viewers to track to our website, paducah.travel/creative city, and we will be documenting your Paducah story and your time here in this this episode there with some posting. So we look forward to sharing your insights to that group and to the community and your other aspects of your experience.
I'm looking forward to it.
And as we've mentioned, we're looking forward to building on this and hopefully welcoming you back. You have some great ideas of opportunities that may present themselves for our cities to expand this connection.
Yeah. It'd be great if we could do some exchanges.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the Creative Cities Network is built on that. So we certainly have discussed some really exciting opportunities that may come of that. What would be most exciting to you all to see happen with Paducah moving forward?
I would love it if we could have an exchange where we have a creative team from Paducah come to San Antonio, and then we'll send a creative team here and learn from each other. You know, one of the things that strikes me is, yes, we're a city of gastronomy, but it's more than the food, right? It is music. We have fiber arts as well. And so I think being able to share all of the creativity that happens in our cities, because they're connected. If you disconnect just one of those creative fields, you're not necessarily doing the service to the entire culture. So it'd be fun if we have some teams going back and forth between our two cities.
Yes, we love that. And certainly, you know, the Creative Cities Network is global. And sometimes we see that other parts of the world have a better understanding, perhaps, of what being a creative city is. Sometimes for us, we will equate it to a sister program to the World Heritage Sites, of which San Antonio has a connection as well. Have you found that to be a very valuable connection to talk about creative city and World Heritage and how those combine? Or how have you found is the best way to illustrate what it means to be a creative city?
That's a great question, because we actually came at it from a different direction. Before we knew we were going to even apply to be a creative city, we started hosting what we call a Living Heritage Symposium. And that was because we understood that we were on the verge of losing culture, the intangible side of that. And we knew that there were places around the world that were managing intangible heritage very well. You know, that's the spiritual values, that's the traditions, the songs and the dances, as we mentioned before. So we started hosting people from around the world to come to San Antonio to talk to us about how they were preserving culture and heritage. And we were dubbing it Living Heritage. What we now realize is that was part of the Creative City Network. So we were jumping into it before we even knew we could be part of this network. So it's been that sharing of information that I think has been the most valuable for us. We're learning quite a bit.
I think that your example there, if you were doing it before you had the title or knew that that title was what you were doing. And that's something that we very much see, you know, seeing a presentation on historic preservation, and you see, oh, all of those are creative cities. It's very much something I think that we can all understand, but the title just gives a bit more significance and that camaraderie between our cities with the focus on that. So we're excited to get your perspective and build that into our local understanding while you're here.
And likewise, I'm learning a lot from Paducah.
Well, the World Heritage, I would love if you could tell a bit more about that, because we are more familiar with creative cities. What does World Heritage look like?
So World Heritage, just the process of that is very lengthy. So it was at least 9 years in the making for the nomination itself. Of course, I like to say it was 300 years in the making because it wouldn't have happened without those missions. But to be even considered for the inscription, you have to be on a tentative list. So that began about, well, I say 9, but actually it's about 10 years now. And there was a lot of community work. It was a collaborative process with many stakeholders, including the city, the county, our local conservation society, and numerous universities, to forge together an entire nomination where we have to justify what is the outstanding universal value of these missions in San Antonio. So it's a much more rigorous process. But the two really work together because what the outstanding universal value doesn't necessarily call out intentionally is that creativity. But that's really what sparked the idea, the existence of these missions. So it's about innovation. It may have been 300 years ago, but at the time it was highly innovative. And it took a creative process, and it took a coming together of cultures to be able to create that. And when we talk about learning from other people, that's what was happening with the missions. Now, you know, unfortunately, as with missions everywhere, there's a negative side to that story. And so we don't hide that. But the creative side of us allows us to celebrate what maybe we wouldn't do in all cases.
Yes, and one thing that you said earlier that really speaks to that and the connection between the two is that, you know, creativity has such value, and we see people moving forward, creating new experiences, new dishes, being innovative, but all of that has roots in culture and in that heritage.
And for us, it goes back eons.
Yes. And you mentioned that San Antonio is just a little maybe ahead of Paducah in our timelines. Because of that heritage.
Yes, we were founded over 100 years earlier than Paducah was. I think Paducah was founded in 1830, so San Antonio was founded in 1718. So we had 100 years of learning and trying to figure out things before we could get to where we are right now.
Well, we're excited to see the comparisons and the insights here. One other thing I would love to touch on, with you being a representative of gastronomy and of Texas, there are a couple of other creative cities that are connections there. So Tucson being a city of gastronomy, have you found some great relationships thus far through that southwestern kind of connection through gastronomy?
Yes, in fact, Tucson was instrumental in guiding us through the process. Their focal point there, the point of contact for creative cities are called focal points. And the focal point in Tucson is Jonathan Mabry. The focal point in San Antonio is Colleen Swain. She's the director of our World Heritage Office. And the two connected very early on as we were writing our application. And I should say, we did our application at a very fast pace. We started in April, and we had to submit by June. So Tucson was so helpful in telling us what the expectations were, what we needed to discuss. And so I don't think we could have done it without them, which is another wonderful value of being a creative city. It's really that shared experience and that connection to assist each other. There's no competition. It's about helping each other out.
Collaboration, absolutely. And Tucson has had such great success in telling their story to travel media. I know that they've gotten some great press, and I'm sure that San Antonio will follow suit as you get more into the designation.
We're already starting to see the fruits of that. Our own Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is now called Visit San Antonio, has been tracking the number of marketing hits that we get out of this, and it's really the uptick is amazing. So you immediately begin to experience that. For us, that's going to mean increased economy in terms of cultural tourism.
Exactly. And that's one of the big things that we've worked to quantify, being tourism, and coming at it from that approach of storytelling to draw people in and build the economy in that way. We've seen over 5 years huge growth in that regard. So we look forward to that for you as well.
Thank you.
And in your region, if visiting San Antonio, you've got to visit Austin as well, which is so neat to have two creative cities that close, and having different types of creative cities. So gastronomy, and then Austin being a city of media arts. Has that been a valuable connection in learning?
Absolutely. So as you might imagine, San Antonio and Austin are often collaborating on different things. But yes, being part of the same network has been so valuable for us. I mean, they have such fantastic events such as, the South by Southwest, the film festivals, and just the Austin City Limits Festival. So not to mention all the technology, which is why media is so important for them. So they've been a great example for San Antonio to follow.
And they're one that we look to quite often. We think they were so forward-thinking to go with media arts when they very easily could have gone with music or film. There are many different literature, design. There are many things they could have gone with, but media arts, so forward-thinking, and we look to them to say, What is that future in the arts?
Which is the really another thing I think everyone should know about the Creative City Network is this is meant to be all-encompassing of all types of creativity, not to just focus on that one thing that you might have been designated for. So even though a city may have been designated for their literature, that doesn't mean that a city of gastronomy and the city of literature don't have something to share, because we're all looking for the same. We may have arrived there in a different way, but we're all looking for the same kinds of outcomes.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask you anything else that you would want to share about creative cities and the value, you know, that your city sees in sustaining your culture and your future.
I think it's just that. It's really being able to see how creative the city is, even despite the fact that it's just about gastronomy doesn't really mean that's all we should be focusing on. And that gastronomy doesn't mean just food, right? Gastronomy means the way people interact with the food. So it's not just what we're eating, but it's our food production. It's who gets jobs in that industry and food waste. So the sustainability of the planet and how we eat and how we produce food is really all interlocked together.
Is there a project in San Antonio that you might share that in regards to that, kind of the social impacts?
Yeah, so and it connects to our World Heritage missions. We have what's called a food farm now. So our food bank is now growing foods in the traditional ways on the original agricultural fields of our San Antonio missions. So this is something that we've just begun to work on, but basically the idea is that we can once again feed population from the food that we're growing locally, using some of the irrigation systems that were historically available and still continue to be available. So it's a great way to show this isn't just about going to a fancy restaurant. It's really about how food systems interact with our social systems.
Wow. Well, this is Tourism Talk. We've got to encourage our viewers to visit San Antonio. Obviously, there's so much to experience, and that intangible creative energy that comes with being a creative city certainly is one of them.
Yes,
so,
we'd welcome anyone who wants to come to San Antonio.
Wonderful. And I would love if you would share where people can find more information about the Creative City.
So if you just Google San Antonio World Heritage Office, you will find it on their website.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here in Paducah, Claudia, and for being my guest today on Tourism Talk.
It's my pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you. And please do continue to tune into Tourism Talk. Look forward to more U.S. Creative City profiles, and we will see you next time.
Ba-da-bow.